The Trump administration has announced sweeping changes to asylum processing that's going to affect every single asylum seeker in America right now. And while much of this was reportedly planned for months or longer, a violent attack on 2 National Guard members by an Afghan asylee gave the administration the political cover that it needed to implement these restrictions immediately and to go much further and harder against immigrants than ever before. In this video, I'm going to tell you what you need to know about the pause on the issuance of asylum decisions, as well as about how even people who've already been granted asylum or a green card permanent residency may be at risk under this new policy. And we'll also cover a change to work permits that's going to affect asylum seekers. And we're starting right now. I'm Brian Manning, and I spent 11 years working for the government's 2 main agencies for asylum and refugee matters, and during that time, I adjudicated thousands of immigration applications. But now, as an asylum lawyer, I help immigrants all over the country to secure their future in America through asylum. Let me know in the comments if you've got an asylum case pending, or maybe you're considering applying, and listen, I'd especially like to hear from you. If you've been waiting for an asylum interview with USCIS for multiple years, let me know in the comments how long you've been waiting. On November 26th, an Afghan national opened fire on 2 National Guard members in downtown Washington, D.C., just blocks from the White House. Now, as a result of this tragic incident, a 20-year-old National Guard specialist died on Thanksgiving Day, and a 24-year-old staff sergeant was left in critical condition. Now, the shooter had worked with CIA-backed Zero units in Afghanistan. These are elite paramilitary groups that conduct counterterrorism operations alongside U.S. forces. The alleged attacker came to the United States in September 2021 through Operation Allies Welcome, which was the massive humanitarian evacuation after the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan that was meant to provide shelter. People who had supported the U.S. and its allies and were thus at risk from the Taliban. Now, he was granted asylum in April 2025 during the Trump administration. Now, here's where this gets political, and you need to understand the rhetoric being used because it reveals the thinking behind these policies. President Trump immediately labeled the shooting a terrorist attack and declared that lax migration policies are the single greatest national security threat facing our nation. So we're not talking about actual terrorism, not any specific terrorist group, but rather migration policies themselves. Now, he said these policies threaten our very survival as a nation, and Trump threatened to halt migration from all third world countries in response to this incident. Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem urged a complete travel ban on, quote, every damn country, end quote, that she claims is sending, quote, killers, leeches, and entitlement junkies, end quote, to the United States. Now, Vice President J.D. Vance claimed the Biden administration opened the floodgate to unvetted Afghan refugees. He said categorically that they shouldn't have been in our country. Now, this claim that Afghan evacuees were unvetted is simply false. Operation Allies Welcome involved multiple layers of security screening, including biometric data collection and intelligence database checks. And the same is true at the asylum stage. All asylum applicants are thoroughly vetted. This is something that I can attest to as a former government asylum officer myself. But look, the truth doesn't matter here. What matters is that this narrative prepares the public for the harsh policies that would follow. So within 48 hours of the shooting, Secretary of State Marco Rubio announced an immediate pause on visa issuance for all Afghan passport holders. USCIS Director Joseph Edlow announced asylum decisions would be paused until we can ensure that every alien is vetted and screened to the maximum degree possible. And then on December 2nd, USCIS formalized everything with a new policy memorandum. Now, this is the document that's controlling asylum processing right now, and I need to walk you through exactly what it does. So first, and this is the part that affects everyone, USCIS is placing a hold on all asylum decisions. Every single affirmative asylum application pending or newly filed with USCIS, regardless of your country of origin, is frozen when it gets to the decision stage. Now, whether you're from Venezuela, China, Russia, Cameroon, anywhere in the world, if you have an affirmative asylum case pending with USCIS, or if you apply now with USCIS, well, you're not getting a decision right now. But here's what people absolutely need to understand, and this is critical. USCIS has made clear to asylum officers internally that they're going going to keep processing cases up to the point of decision. So that means they're still accepting applications. So if you want to file for asylum, well, you can still do that. And they're still scheduling and carrying out interviews. Now look, if you've been waiting for years, you could still get your interview scheduled through a mandamus lawsuit. So all of this means that for my law firm and our asylum clients, it's actually business as usual. We're operating as we always have, building the strongest case possible for our clients and helping them to be as prepared as possible for their asylum interview. We're just not expecting any actual decisions to come through in the coming months. Now, crucially, USCIS is apparently still issuing employment authorization documents, work permits, for asylum seekers. They're still doing biometrics appointments. To be clear, when it comes to asylum cases, they're really doing everything except making the final decision on whether to grant or deny asylum. So think of it like this. They review the application, the evidence, they do the interview, and likely even write up the decision. The officer just doesn't do the final administrative processing to finalize the decision. So they'll put it off to the side and then go back and finalize it once the pause is lifted. Now, how long is this asylum decision pause going to last? Well, we don't know. USCIS says they need time to come up with better policies for vetting asylum applicants. The memo states that this hold, the pause, will remain pending a comprehensive review and until lifted by the USCIS director. There's no sunset clause, no timeline really, it's just kind of indefinite. The policy memo that we've been talking about says USCIS needs to issue formal guidance around all of this within 90 days. So within 90 days, by around early March 2026, we should have a better idea of where things are headed. But right now, there's no timeline for when decisions will resume. Now look, this pause technically only applies to affirmative asylum cases with USCIS. It remains to be seen whether it will affect processing of defensive asylum cases, i.e. cases in immigration court. But I'll of course update you on that when there's more information. Okay, so that's the pause on asylum decisions, but there's more from this policy memorandum. It targets nationals from 19 so-called high-risk countries with even more severe restrictions, pausing the processing of all immigration benefits. So if you're from one of the 19 countries on the list, and this is based, by the way, on country of birth or country of citizenship, not just where you currently hold citizenship, then all of your immigration benefit applications are currently on hold. Now that includes applications for green cards through Form I-485, applications for naturalization through Form N-400, travel document requests, and likely employment authorization requests that aren't connected to a pending asylum application. The policy also strips officers of discretion to waive interviews, so mandatory in-person interviews are now going to be required for all benefit applications from nationals of these 19 countries. This creates an instant bottleneck because USCIS doesn't have sufficient staffing for this volume. And listen, here's what's truly alarming. The policy mandates comprehensive retroactive reviews for anyone from these countries who got any immigration benefit approved on or after January 20th, 2021. So notice that date, January 20th, 2021 is the exact day that President Biden was inaugurated. So this signals a political presumption that any vetting conducted during the Biden administration was inherently flawed or insufficient. So look, if you're an asylee or a green card holder from one of these 19 countries and you got your status approved at any point during the Biden administration, well, your case could be effectively reopened. You could be called back in for what they're calling re-interviews. Now, these are not going to be routine check-ins to just update your information. These are going to be interrogations designed to find any inconsistency or any derogatory information, any basis to rescind your status and place you in deportation proceedings. The policy memo instructs officers to screen for derogatory information on this class of persons. They're going to go through your entire immigration file to look for negative information or apparent contradictions, and then they're going to grill you about it in these so-called re-interviews. Okay, so we've discussed how all asylum decisions are on hold and how people from 19 so-called high-risk countries may have their approved cases reopened and how any pending applications from them are now frozen. Believe it or not, the Trump administration has gone even further in the last weeks. The administration has implemented changes targeting employment authorization. They've slashed work permit validity from 5 years down to just 18 months for asylum seekers and green card applicants. By shortening the validity period, they're forcing applicants to reapply more than 3 times as often, flooding an already overwhelmed system with more paperwork. An 18-month permit effectively provides only 12 months of security before renewal worries begin. The administration also ended automatic extensions for employment authorization renewals. So previously, if you filed for renewal of your EAD before it expired, well, you could keep working for up to 540 days while USCIS processed your new application, your renewal. But now there's no automatic extension. If USCIS doesn't adjudicate your renewal before your old card expires, well, you lose your ability to work legally and you thus may lose your job. The USCIS director justified these changes by stating that all aliens must remember that working in the United States is a privilege, not a right. Now, look, this represents a philosophical shift. Work authorization is no longer viewed as a necessary humanitarian measure for survival while awaiting a legal decision, or as an actual benefit to the American economy, which is actually starved of the kind of labor that many immigrants provide. Instead, it's now treated as a discretionary benefit that can be withheld or shortened as a deterrence mechanism. Now, here's what I want all asylum seekers watching this to understand. Well, yes, it's true that you're not going to get your decision on your asylum case right now if you have one pending with USCIS. But look, this does not change anything about how you should approach your case. If you're in the United States and you're afraid of serious harm if you return to your country and you have not yet applied for asylum, well, you should still talk with a lawyer about possibly applying. The fact that USCIS is still accepting applications means that the window has not closed. The fact that they're still scheduling and carrying out interviews means the process is still moving forward. Look, we don't know when decisions will resume. It could be months or it could be even longer. But if you don't apply, well, you can't benefit when decisions do eventually resume. If you already have a case pending with USCIS, keep actively pursuing it. Keep preparing your case materials carefully and submit a powerful supplemental filing of supporting documents. Prepare for your interview. Practice. Look, don't assume that because decisions aren't being made right now that your case doesn't matter. And look, if your case has been pending for 5 years or more, then you should seriously consider filing a mandamus lawsuit to force the government to schedule your interview. My law firm has filed over 200 mandamus lawsuits to force asylum interview scheduling. And at the time that I'm making this video right now, we haven't lost a single one yet. This is a proven strategy that works. Now look, it's unclear how mandamus will interact with this new policy. Will courts order USCIS to make decisions despite the memo? Well, we don't know yet, but we think there are pretty strong arguments to be had as to why USCIS must conclude cases despite the pause. And we're going to be testing those in pending mandamus lawsuits. I can tell you that we are confident that mandamus will still work to at least get interviews scheduled, which is incredibly important for your case. Because remember, the sooner you get to explain your case through your testimony at your interview and have the officer consider your testimony and all of your evidence, well, the better your chances for success. So the bottom line is this: don't give up on your case. Don't stop pursuing your asylum claim. The Trump administration wants you to self-deport by making life here so difficult and uncertain that you just leave on your own. They want you to give up hope, but look, don't give them that satisfaction. Keep fighting for your future in America. You deserve safety. You deserve due process under the law, and you deserve to have your asylum case adjudicated on its merits, not indefinitely delayed as part of a political strategy. So if you're ready to take the next step and get help with your asylum case, then please call my office today. That number is 713-909-0401. And remember, we have people all over the country, so it doesn't matter where you live. Call us right now to schedule an asylum strategy session so that we can help you to secure your future in America through asylum. Again, I'm Brian Manning, and it's truly an honor to support you in your asylum journey.